My name is Deborah J. Batiste-Tomasi, and I am a project manager for two grants currently. Structural racism. If I'm understanding what that is actually meaning, I can best explain it, I think, and I hope this is beneficial to your project. I was born in Oklahoma in 1952, basically being raised by the system, and to say that it's that it was prejudicial is just to say that there's a lot of control that my family experienced and I experienced in my early years growing up under the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Because my father had inherited restricted lands through the BIA and the Bureau of Land Management, but back in those days it was just the BIA. The Bureau of Indian Affairs would appoint a guardian, someone that was responsible to an Indian person, like my father and his sister, that would determine what they would be able to do with their money. So it's a guardianship that, in a sense, that they don't have adult status, basically. If you have a guardian, you can't legally sign any document. You can't hire a lawyer. You can't, buy a car. You can do nothing legally without a guardian's permission. So that system that originally, now that I'm grown and did research, I can best understand that there could have been some good intentions with it, such as Native people in those days. I grew up with Choctaws that didn't speak English, for instance, and we're Choctaws of Oklahoma. And that they would be taken advantage of. Somebody knew that they had money. Oh, well, let me sell you this piece of land over here, and maybe the land's, worth, back in those days, $1 an acre or something, and then they, come to my father or somebody and say, well, you're going to have to pay me $100 an acre. So, and if they didn't understand the English, if they didn't, very well, then obviously they were at risk of being taken advantage of. So I believe in my heart that the intentions of the Bureau of Indian Affairs was to help Indian people to help protect and preserve what they inherited. But because people are people, I guess, and control is a part of either someone's ego or power, and then money, which allows that guardian to would decide, like with my father, all the years of his life, and he died early from a surgery incident, that he was never, ever able to know how much he had in his own IIM account. And that's what they call it now. IIM account is an individual Indian monies account. I still have one. I'm 69. I still have an IIM account. And my properties are still restricted in the sense that if it's land like in Oklahoma and an oil company wants to lease it to determine if there's any minerals there, or to pull the minerals from the earth, then I'm able, as my family members and I are able, to negotiate. If it's a grazing lease, we're not. We don't have any legal rights over that. They can sign and lease it for us without our permission. Growing up was quite interesting, because when you say that to me, the racial prejudice is how harsh they were on my mother. She had to have a guardian too. All us kids had to have guardians, my brother and sister and me. And so we were told, and my mother was told, basically, the guardian will make all the decisions on your children, and they're not to ask you for money. Like, you don't buy them an ice cream cone, you don't do anything they have to have their guardian's permission to spend money if they need money. And if you're a child and really young, I mean, I was 4 at the time. So I never got to have that monetary exchange with my mom. And I don't know if you can imagine what that's like, that you couldn't go to your mom or dad or your guardian, whoever you were in charge of. Could I have $1? Could I have could I get an ice cream cone? Could I get something? So that made it unusual, in the beginning of life, just dealing with that. And then when I got old enough, like 12 or 13, where I could go down, and we lived in a small town in Oklahoma called Hugo, and I could go down to the local dress shop, and I could try on clothes, and the lady would make a list of everything I tried on that I particularly wanted, but I had to have the guardian's permission. And then she'd get on the phone and she'd call my guardian to see if Deborah could buy these clothes. Yeah, same with when I got older at 16 and wanted a car. Everything I had to do or could do had to have the guardian's permission. I never got to have that reaction with my mom. My mom would get upset with the guardian over things because she would want things or need things. And the Bureau would do something like this, like there was a really cruel superintendent by Donald G. Moon, and he would make sure that my mom's money that she had requested for Christmas for her kids would arrive Christmas Eve. Well, y'all know what it's like to shop on Christmas Eve. It's horrid. So we were deprived of events like that, having Christmas presents on Christmas Day. The fact that my mom would run up the phone bill, as an example, and so because her phone bill was high, and she had the money in her account to pay for the phone bill. It's not like there was, there was no money to take care of it in that way. But because he was cruel, he was always cruel to her, and controlling her funds, that he actually, and I said to him, because, at 16, I'm a cheerleader, I'm, a barrel racer, I'm busy with school, and we lived out in the country. And so once I got a car, and I said, I had 7 brothers and sisters. I'd say, what if something happened to one of us kids? We need a phone. We need a phone. So because my mom had used the phone to spend too much, or her bill was too high, he didn't approve of how much she was spending on the phone. He took the phone out. And when I pleaded, well, we are going to need a phone. What if the house catches fire? Something, we need a phone here. He put a payphone in my bedroom. He also made me put a lock on my door, like a padlock with and a key to get into my bedroom. He didn't want my mom having the privilege to use the payphone. I'm thinking she's paying for it if she has her own dime. But if you imagine being a teenager and you're talking to your friends on the phone, and then, please deposit your money again. Oh, well, what was that? What was that, Debbie? Just the humiliation and the embarrassment, and then to put your dimes in, ka-ching, ka-ching, or they already knew it. People knew 9016. How do you forget numbers like that? Anything that was a 9 was a payphone number. So well, can I have Orlando? Can I have your phone number? And then once I would give my phone number, well, that's a payphone number. I mean, just the embarrassment, when you grow up and you're a teenager. I mean, you don't want lipstick on your teeth, nothing. You much less have to put a dime in a payphone. So that was pretty horrid. Then I move away. I've lived under the BIA, and I don't mind sharing this with y'all because it's recorded in the Library of Congress when they interviewed me for the Homegrown Concert series. And I won't tell the last part. I might tell you if it's not being recorded. But the one was that, BIA stands for Bureau of Indian Affairs. But to natives and some of us that lived under that structure, we called it BIA, stood for Boss Indian Around. And like I said, the third part, I'll reserve that for the Library of Congress if anybody decides to research it. But the point being is that I was so, I felt so, I'm going to say dehumanized, deprived of being raised by my mom with her majority, by having a guardian, who would like buy me a car, but it was my money. He would approve. A guardian had to approve your funds. If I had anything, if I had a toothbrush, if I had shoes, if I had, anything I needed, my needs being met, it had to have the guardian's approval. And so by the time I was 18, I was very tired of it, and which is why I decided to, I moved to Hawaii, but then I took off to the Fiji Islands. And while I was in Fiji, I had requested money from my account. It's my account. There are federal fiduciary laws. There's a rack of books that tells that what the federal trustee and trustor laws are about. And because I moved out of the country, I left my little district. And so I went to Muskogee, the main office in Oklahoma, and requested money from my account, and received a letter from the superintendent. And the superintendent in those days, before the Louise Cobell case, the superintendent still had to approve every penny you requested from your account. And when I did that by not going through him, because I didn't live in East District anymore, I went to the head office in Muskogee in Oklahoma. He wrote me a letter and said that if I ever went behind his back or around him again, I would never receive a penny from my account. So the threats were there, the abuse was there, the guardian, I eventually stopped going to pick up my allowance because he tried to rape me. And I never wanted to go. Fine, I'll go pick up bottles and turn them in, try to get gas for my car or something. But it was things like that. Just there was always something non-supportive in that sense. So when I came back to America, it's after it took Louise Cobell, who had discovered the same thing that I was discovering. Mr. Moon had me request money from my account. I had to write down, like, if this much money for insurance, this for tires for my car, or this to pay the taxes. I had to write it, and he required me to write that in pencil, basically, so he could erase it. But I had to write it amortized out to the penny of what I was requesting from my account. So whenever I signed it, a blank voucher from my account, and the space where I'm putting in the amount that I'm requesting, he wouldn't let me. I said, I'm signing a blank request from my account, or you don't get your money. I won't approve it. So no choice. So those kinds of control and power, that was the same man that once we did have a new superintendent, an elder woman had requested money from her account. And Mr. Jack Pate was the superintendent, and he's native, he's Choctaw too. And he shared with me that he couldn't believe how we were being treated. That Mr. Moon used to have her, when she showed up and she got her check mailed to the superintendent's office, and she went to pick up her check. She said, well, sir, who do I make this check out to now that Mr. Moon's gone? Mr. Pate said, what are you talking about? And she said, well, Mr. Moon said that because he's a Christian, that we have to tithe 10%. And since I said, well, I'm a Christian too, and I'll take it to my church. And he said, well, I don't think I can trust you to take it to your church, so you make the check out to me. So she had to make the check out to Mr. Moon. So she was thinking she had to make it out to the new superintendent, 10% of her own money, to make sure that it went to the church for tithing. Those were the types of behaviors by the superintendents, by humans, by people. And whether the Bureau, would do things like that or not, there's just multiple stories that go on about, what has happened to us because of that. I'm 69. So since I was, so for 65 years, I still, as long as I keep my restricted properties restricted, but that is one thing that I could go and have my restrictions removed and do away with my IIM account and do away with restricted lands. But all of my land currently is like undivided because I have siblings. So I still am under that, but it's still, to me, not a freedom and not a way that adults should be treated. But the Louise Cobell incident, since they found out that the department was, people in the department were basically stealing money from people's accounts, that they were able to pass and get an independent company now. So now we're able to request money from our IIM accounts, individual Indian monies accounts, without any interruption or permission. And the real fiduciary laws of this country, of the Department of the Interior, is that never once did that guardian legally have a right to deny a request. And like my mom, being an adult, anything that she wanted from her account, the policy, I guess, or the structure, basically said that their duty, their fiduciary responsibility, was to be sure that what that person was buying was fair. So they were like supposed to be an objective person, but that's not how it happened in Oklahoma.